That's what you get, sister. My brother Elias's voice boomed at me like thunder. He had just arrived from the farm and was standing in the living room entrance with something in his hands, something that made my son, Robert, who seconds before had punched me in the face, go completely white with terror. When I saw the look of panic on Robert's face, I knew it was all over. But before I tell you what my brother brought with him that afternoon, let me explain how we got to this moment. Because this story began long before when I decided to become invisible to discover who the people I called family really were. Everything exploded just an hour ago when I told my son that I would not work for free again at my daughter-in-law, Karen's company. Those were my exact words. I will not work for free at your company again. Simple, direct, true. And for those words, Robert closed his fist and punched me squarely in the face with a force I didn't know he possessed. The impact threw me against the living room wall. I felt my lips split open and warm blood fill my mouth. The pain was sharp, stabbing, but it was nothing compared to the pain of seeing my only son's eyes filled with absolute contempt as he raised his fist again. "It's not enough that I give you a roof over your head," he shouted, his face red with fury. "You still demand respect. You're a kept old woman who lives off my charity." Karen was sitting on the Italian leather sofa, the one that cost $8,000 and that I had paid for without them ever knowing. My daughter-in-law looked at me with those cold, honey-colored eyes, enjoying every second of my humiliation as if it were her favorite television show. She was wearing a tight champagne-colored dress that she probably bought with a credit card that was maxed out. Her lips curved into a smile as my son hit me. "Robert, honey, don't get so worked up," Karen said with that soft, sweet voice she used when she wanted to manipulate someone. "Your mother is confused. At her age, these rebellious outbursts are normal. It's probably late-onset menopause or something." Late-onset menopause. As if I were a lunatic who didn't know what I was saying. I touched my split lip and saw the blood on my fingers. 64 years of life, and this was what I received from the people I'd given everything to. If you're watching this video, please subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching my story of revenge from. I want to know how far it has reached. "Mom, listen to me closely," Robert said, leaning toward me with his finger pointing at my face. "You live in my house, you eat my food, you use my water. The very least you can do is work a few hours at Karen's company. Or do you think supporting you is free?" A few hours, 12 hours a day, Monday through Saturday, was what he called a few hours. I arrived at 7 in the morning at that office on the 14th floor of a corporate building downtown. I prepared coffee for Karen and her 2 employees, Melissa and Danielle. I cleaned the bathrooms, organized files, swept, mopped, carried boxes of documents that destroyed my back. I answered the phone when they were busy. I prepared the boardrooms for important meetings, and all of it, absolutely all of it, without receiving a single cent of salary. "You just don't understand how generous I'm being with you, Lillian," Karen added, getting up from the sofa and walking toward me with those stilettos that echoed against the hardwood floor. "Other daughters-in-law would have sent their mother-in-law to a nursing home years ago, but I gave you the opportunity to feel useful, to have a purpose in your old age. Do you know how many women your age would kill to have what you have?" What I had. An old mattress in a tiny room at the end of the hall, clothes they considered appropriate donations for an elderly woman, leftover food from their elegant dinners, the privilege of washing their clothes, ironing their shirts, cleaning up their messes, and, of course, the honor of working for free at Karen and Associates Business Consulting, the company my daughter-in-law showed off on social media as if it were an empire, when in reality it barely survived month to month. "I won't do it anymore," I repeated, wiping the blood from my mouth. "Find someone else." The second blow was worse than the first. Robert slapped me with the back of his hand, and I fell to my knees on the floor. This time, Karen applauded. She literally applauded as if she were at the theater. "Exactly, my love. That's how you set boundaries. People like your mother need to remember their place in this world." My place, what an interesting concept. From the floor, with my cheek burning and my lip bleeding, I looked at both of them. Robert in his tight gray office suit that was straining at the stomach because he had gained 30 pounds in the last year. Karen with her expensive hair extensions and her decorated gel nails that cost more than she earned in a week. The two of them stood in front of me as if they were royalty and I was the peasant. Do you know what bothers me most about you, Lillian? Karen asked, crossing her arms. That you're not even grateful. My company rescued you from misery. When you arrived here 2 years ago, you had nothing. You came from that horrible little town in the country with 2 old suitcases and clothes that smelled of mildew. Robert opened the doors of his home to you because he is a good son, despite the fact that you were never a good mother. Never a good mother. The words came out of her mouth like venom. This woman who had only known my son for 5 years, who wasn't there when I worked 18 hours a day to feed him after his father left us, who didn't see the nights I spent awake taking care of him when he had a fever. This woman dared to tell me I wasn't a good mother. Karen is right, Robert said, and those words hurt more than any physical blow. You were always selfish, Mom. Always thinking only of yourself. Dad left because he couldn't stand living with a bitter woman like you, and now you expect us to pay you a salary for doing basic tasks that any grateful person would gladly do. I stayed on the floor looking at them. I could have gotten up. I could have said so many things. I could have revealed everything right then and there, but something stopped me. A voice in my head, the voice of my mother who died 10 years ago, whispered to me, "Wait, daughter, let them drown in their own arrogance. The truth always arrives at the exact moment. Now get up and go to your room," Robert ordered, pointing down the hall. "And tomorrow at 6 in the morning, I want to see you ready to go to the office. Karen has an important presentation with investors, and she needs everything to be perfect. You're going to clean, you're going to prepare coffee, you're going to smile, and you're going to behave like the grateful employee you should be. Do you understand?" I got up slowly, feeling every one of my 64 years in my knees. "I understand perfectly," I said in a low voice. And it was true. I understood perfectly who these people were. I understood perfectly that there was no turning back. I understood perfectly that the moment had arrived. I walked toward my room with my head bowed, playing my role as the defeated old woman to perfection. Behind me, I heard Karen say to Robert, "You'll see, tomorrow she'll be tame as a lamb. That's how these old women are. They just need a couple of slaps to remember who's boss." I closed my bedroom door and sat on the bed. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from contained rage. For too long. I took my phone out of my pocket, that old model with big buttons that Robert had given me, saying, "It's perfect for you, Mom. That way you can see the numbers well." What he didn't know was that inside the ugly floral case was another phone, a latest model iPhone, where I managed my real life. I wrote a short message, "Elias, it's time. Come tomorrow. Bring the documents." The answer came in less than a minute. "I'm on my way, sister. This ends now." The truth revealed. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed sitting on the bed, looking at the ceiling of my small room, that 10 by 10 foot space that Robert and Karen called your room, as if they were doing me the favor of the century. The cream-colored walls were bare except for an old calendar and a blurry photo I found in a drawer when I arrived. They hadn't even bothered to decorate this place. After all, it was just the room of the free employee. I touched my swollen lip and felt the scab that had formed over the wound. Tomorrow, I would have a horrible bruise on my cheek. Perfect. It would be the physical evidence of what my son was capable of doing. I got up and walked to the small closet where I kept my clothes. On the surface, there were only simple blouses, cotton pants, generic sweaters, the clothes a poor old woman would wear according to Karen's standards. But in the back of the closet, hidden inside an old locked suitcase, were my real clothes. 3 Italian designer suits, each valued at over $2,000. 4 French silk blouses, 2 pairs of handmade genuine leather shoes, a pearl gray wool coat that cost $500. Everything discreet, everything elegant, everything invisible to eyes that only saw poverty when they looked at me. I took my laptop out of the same suitcase. It wasn't the old slow computer I used in Karen's office to do secretarial tasks. This was a latest model MacBook Pro with double encryption and access to accounts my son couldn't even imagine. I turned it on and the screen light illuminated my bruised face in the dark room. I opened my main email, the one I had been managing for 15 years. 238 unread messages, bank transfer confirmations, reports from my property managers, investment updates, meeting requests. My real life existed on this screen, invisible to everyone who saw me as a useless old woman. The first email was from my accountant, Ismail. Mrs. Lillian, the downtown properties generated $10,000 this month. The tenants of the commercial building renewed their contract for 3 more years. Attached is the detailed report. $10,000 in 1 month, more than Karen earned in a whole year with her barely surviving company. The second email was from my lawyer. Lillian, the documents you requested are ready. I confirm that the building where your son lives is registered under the trust, just as we established 2 years ago. They have no way of knowing that you are the real owner. The lease agreement Robert signed is completely legal and binding. I read those words 3 times. The apartment where they humiliated me daily was mine. Every inch of those walls belonged to me. When Robert signed the rental contract 2 years ago, he thought he was getting a brilliant deal. Mom, I found an amazing apartment, he had told me on the phone with that excited voice. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a full floor in a new building. The owner is desperate to rent. He's given me a ridiculously low price, only paying $2,000 a month. Isn't that great? What he didn't know was that the desperate owner was a shell corporation registered in Delaware, and behind that company was me. $2,000 a month that my son paid religiously every month, believing he was doing some unknown investor a favor. And yet $2,000 a year that went directly into my account. And the best part was that he never, ever suspected anything. Why would he suspect? I was just his poor mother who had arrived from the country with 2 old suitcases, without education, without resources, without anything of value. The third email made me smile despite the pain in my lip. It was from Melissa, one of Karen's employees. Mrs. Lillian, just as you asked, I am sending you copies of all the company's financial documents. The numbers don't lie. Karen is lying about the profits. The company has debts of $13,000 with suppliers. There are unpaid invoices from 8 months ago. The 3 big clients she shows off on social media stopped working with her 6 months ago. There are only 2 small clients left who pay very little. At this rate, the company will go bankrupt in less than 4 months. Melissa was smarter than Karen thought. 6 months ago, when I saw that I needed inside information, I approached her during a break. I asked her about her family, her dreams, her frustrations. She told me that Karen owed her 3 months of salary, that she worked 12 hours a day but barely had enough to pay her rent, that she was tired of the lies and the exploitation. Then I made her a simple proposal. Help me understand how this company really works, and I will make sure you get back every cent you are owed, plus generous compensation for your time. I paid her $5,000 in advance as a show of good faith. Her eyes almost popped out of their sockets when she saw the transfer in her account. Since then, Melissa became my eyes and ears inside that office. Every document Karen signed, every meeting she had, every lie she told, everything came to my email. And Karen, in her infinite arrogance, never noticed that her supposedly dumb employee was documenting every one of her frauds. Because yes, and frauds, plural. In the last 8 months I spent working for free in that office, I saw things that chilled my blood. Fake invoices presented to clients, services billed but never delivered, inflated expense reports, tax returns with invented numbers. Karen was not just a mediocre businesswoman, she was a criminal, and she had left evidence of every one of her crimes in those files that I organized while she drank coffee and showed off on Instagram. I opened another folder on my laptop. Project Robert. I had ironically titled it. Inside were screenshots of all the conversations between my son and Karen where they talked about me. I read them again, although I already knew them by heart. Your mother is such a burden, Robert. We should send her to a nursing home and forget about her. I know, love, but for now she's useful as a free employee. When she's no longer useful, we'll kick her out. When she's no longer useful. As if I were an old rag that is used until it breaks and then thrown in the trash. I kept reading. Did you see how your mom organized the files wrong today? She is so incompetent. Sometimes I want to scream at her. Do it if you want, love. She can't complain anyway. She has nowhere to go. You're right. It's like having a legal slave. We should take more advantage. A legal slave. Those had been Karen's exact words 4 months ago, and Robert had responded with a laughing emoji. My own son laughing at the idea of having me as a slave. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. The pain in my chest was not from the physical blows. It was from realizing that I had raised a monster. I looked at the time, 3:00 a.m. In a few hours, I would have to get up, get ready, and continue acting like the submissive, defeated old woman. But this would be the last time. Elias would arrive this afternoon with the documents that would prove everything, the documents that would destroy the fantasy in which Robert and Karen lived. My brother Elias, the only one who knew the complete truth from the beginning. When I decided to come and live with Robert 2 years ago, Elias told me, "Yeah, sister, this is crazy. Why do you want to submit yourself to this?" I explained to him, "I need to know who my son really is. I need to see with my own eyes if money and marriage turned him into someone different, or if he was always like this and I didn't want to see it." Elias understood. He always understood. My younger brother, 11 years younger than me, the baby of the family who grew up watching me sacrifice everything for Robert. Elias built an agricultural empire from scratch, 3,000 acres of land, 2 food processing plants, export contracts with 6 countries. But he kept a low profile, wearing simple clothes, driving old pickup trucks, living in a modest house in the middle of his lands. The people in the town saw him as just another farmer. They never imagined he was a millionaire, just like me. We had both learned the same lesson from our mother. True wealth is hidden. Only the insecure need to show off. Mom died without Robert ever knowing that she had owned half the town. He thought his grandmother was a poor lady who sold tamales. He never knew that those tamales funded schools, provided scholarships to dozens of students, and bought the lands that Elias now managed. The last performance, I woke up at 5:30 a.m. to the sound of the cheap alarm clock on the nightstand. My body ached from having slept barely 2 hours. I got up and walked to the small mirror hanging on the wall. The bruise on my cheek was exactly as I'd imagined, a dark violet circle that extended from my cheekbone almost to my ear. My lip was still swollen, and the scab looked grotesque under the yellowish light of the room. Perfect. I wanted everyone to see what my son had done to me. I put on a cream-colored cotton blouse, the one Karen always criticized, saying it looked like a dishcloth, light brown pants and black flats, the perfect uniform of the invisible employee. I tied my hair back in a low ponytail, no makeup, no jewelry, the spitting image of a woman defeated by life. I left my room exactly at 6 o'clock. Robert was already in the kitchen drinking coffee, dressed in his usual gray suit. When he saw me, his expression changed for a second. I saw something that could have been guilt or regret, but it disappeared so fast that maybe I imagined it. "Good morning," I said in a soft, submissive voice. He grumbled something unintelligible and continued looking at his phone. Karen came out of the master bedroom 15 minutes later, wrapped in a champagne-colored satin robe that probably cost more than she earned in a week. She looked me up and down and smiled when she saw the bruising. "Oh, Lillian, that bruise looks terrible. You should put some ice on it. We don't want clients at the office to think we are some shady company where people walk around bruised. We don't want them to think, as if the problem were the appearance and not the fact that her husband had hit me." "I'll put on makeup," I lied, knowing I wouldn't. I wanted every person in that office to see my face. I wanted visible evidence of what this family was doing to me. "Hurry up," Karen ordered, pouring coffee into an expensive porcelain cup. "We have to be at the office by 7. The investors from Dallas are coming today, and everything has to be impeccable. I hope you ironed the boardroom curtains like I asked yesterday." I didn't remind her that she had asked me 1,000 different things yesterday while yelling at me for being slow and incompetent. I just nodded and murmured, "Yes, it's all ready." The drive to the office was silent. Robert drove his car while Karen was in the passenger seat checking her Instagram, probably posting a photo with motivational phrases about success and female empowerment. I was in the back watching the city wake up through the window. Every street, every building, every traffic light reminded me why I had made this decision 2 years ago. We arrived at the corporate building at 7:05 a.m. We went up to the 14th floor in the elevator. Karen touched up her makeup in the mirror while Robert checked emails on his phone. Neither looked at me. To them, I was part of the furniture, something that simply existed to serve them. When the elevator doors opened, Karen stepped out first, her heels clattering against the marble floor. "Lillian, I want fresh coffee in 10 minutes, and check that the bathrooms are clean and make sure the boardroom smells nice. Use that lavender spray we bought." We entered the office. Karen and Associates. read the sign on the glass door with gold letters that probably cost a fortune Karen didn't have. The space was open plan, 4 desks, a small boardroom with glass walls, a kitchenette, 2 bathrooms, all decorated in white and gray tones, trying to look minimalist and modern, but only managing to look cold and empty. Melissa was already at her desk. She looked at me and her eyes widened when she saw my face. She opened her mouth to say something, but I made a subtle gesture with my head. Not now. She understood and went back to looking at her computer. Danielle, the other employee, arrived 20 minutes later. She also froze when she saw me, but had the intelligence not to comment. I prepared the coffee as ordered. I cleaned the bathrooms that were already clean. I sprayed the lavender spray in the boardroom. I organized the folders with the presentations Karen would use to impress the supposed investors. I did everything with the precision of someone who has done these tasks 1,000 times. And as I did it, I observed every detail, every conversation, every movement. At 9 in the morning, Karen was nervous. The investors would arrive in an hour, and she was obsessively reviewing her PowerPoint presentation. Lillian, come here. She called me with that tone she used when she wanted everyone to know she was the boss. I approached her desk. When the investors arrive, you stay in the kitchenette. I don't want them to see you with that horrible face. They'll say we're a violent company or something. I understand, I replied, lowering my gaze. Karen smiled, satisfied. Good. And one more thing, prepare elegant snacks. We have cheese and crackers in the fridge. Make it look professional, not like poor people's food. I went to the kitchenette and prepared the platter of snacks. As I cut the cheese that was probably already expired, I heard Karen talking on the phone. Yes, Dad, I promise you, I'm closing the deal today. These investors are going to put $200,000 into the company. I'll finally be able to pay you back what I owe you. So Karen also owed her father money. Interesting. I stored that information in my memory. At exactly 10 o'clock, the office doorbell rang. Karen jumped up so fast she almost knocked over her coffee. She smoothed out the pearl-colored dress she was wearing and walked toward the door with her best saleswoman's smile. Welcome. Come in, please. Come in. 2 men entered, one older, around 50, in a black suit with a leather briefcase. The other younger, maybe 35, with glasses and a serious expression. Karen shook their hands with exaggerated enthusiasm. Mr. Thompson, Mr. Johnson, it's an honor to have you here. Please, take a seat in the boardroom. Can I offer you coffee, water, something to eat? The men accepted coffee. Karen gave me a desperate signal. I prepared 2 cups of coffee and took them to the boardroom. When I entered, I kept my head down, but I felt the gazes of the 2 men on my bruised face. The older one frowned. The younger one wrote something in his notebook. I left the cups on the table and quickly left. I stayed in the kitchenette as ordered, but I could hear everything through the glass walls. Karen began her presentation in a sweet, professional voice. Gentlemen, Karen and Associates is a business consulting firm experiencing exponential growth. We have worked with over 50 companies in the last 2 years, generating extraordinary results. Our team of experts offers innovative solutions that transform businesses. Lie after lie after lie. There were not 50 companies. There were barely 2 active clients, and both paid ridiculous amounts. The team of experts were 2 exploited employees and an enslaved mother-in-law. The innovative solutions were PowerPoint presentations copied from the internet, but Karen spoke with so much confidence that I could almost believe her if I didn't know the truth. Mr. Thompson interrupted her. Mrs. Karen, your numbers in the preliminary report you sent us do not match the information we obtained from our sources. You claim to have billed $500,000 last year, but according to the public tax registry, your company reported less than $80,000. The silence that followed was delicious. I saw Karen's face go from pink to red to white in a matter of seconds. Well, there are certain revenues that are managed differently for tax purposes, my daughter-in-law stammered, trying to regain control. Mr. Johnson closed his notebook with a dry thud. Madam, we do not invest in companies with fiscal irregularities. There are clearly serious inconsistencies in your financial information. This meeting is over. The 2 men stood up. Karen got up too, her hands shaking. Wait, please, I can explain everything. It's just a misunderstanding. If you give me 5 more minutes. But they were already walking toward the door. Mr. Thompson stopped for a moment and looked directly at me. Ma'am, are you all right? That bruise on your face looks recent. All eyes turned to me. Karen glared at me, wordlessly warning me to keep my mouth shut. Melissa and Danielle watched intently. For a moment, I considered telling the truth, but it wasn't the time yet. I fell, I lied in a soft voice. The stairs at my house are dangerous. Mr. Thompson didn't believe me. That was obvious from his expression, but he didn't insist. The two men left the office, leaving Karen paralyzed in the middle of the room. As soon as the door closed, she exploded. "This is all your fault," she yelled, pointing at me. "Your horrible face ruined the meeting. You scared them away with that victim bruise." I stood still in the kitchenette as Karen screamed. Her words echoed against the glass walls of the empty office. Melissa and Danielle sank into their chairs, trying to make themselves invisible. No one wanted to be the next target of my daughter-in-law's fury. $200,000. That's $200,000 I desperately needed, and you scared them away with your poor, bruised face. She walked toward me with her fists clenched. For a moment, I thought she would hit me too, but she stopped a few inches from my face. I could smell her expensive perfume mixed with nervous sweat. Says, "You are a curse, Lillian. Since you came into our lives, everything has been a disaster. The company is doing badly because of you. Robert is stressed because of you. See, everything is because of you." Because of me. The company was bankrupt because Karen was a fraud who spent more on appearances than on doing real work. Robert was stressed because he lived beyond his means trying to maintain the lifestyle his wife demanded. But of course, it was easier to blame the old woman than to accept their own failures. "I'm sorry," I murmured with the voice I had perfected over 2 years, the voice of the defeated woman who accepts blame that is not hers. Karen took a deep breath, trying to calm down. She turned around and walked toward her desk. She picked up her phone and dialed a number. "Robert, honey, I need you to come to the office right now. Yes, now. It's urgent." The investors left. "No, we didn't close the deal. Your mother ruined everything." She listened to what my son was saying on the other end and smiled maliciously. "Exactly, you're right. It's time to make a decision about her." She hung up the phone and looked at me with those cold eyes that no longer tried to hide the hatred. "Robert is on his way. We're going to have a serious conversation about your future in this family, or rather your lack of future." She sat down in her gray leather executive chair that squeaked every time she moved. She crossed her legs and began typing on her computer, completely ignoring me. The next 40 minutes were the longest of my life. I stayed in the kitchenette, cleaning things that were already clean. Melissa approached at one point, pretending to look for something in the refrigerator. "Mrs. Lillian," she whispered, so low I could barely hear her. "Are you sure you want to go through with this? It's getting very dangerous." I gave her a quick look that meant, "Trust me," and she nodded before returning to her desk. Robert arrived at 11:30 a.m. He came in like a hurricane, his face red with rage and his tie loose. "Where is she?" he asked without even greeting anyone. Karen pointed toward the kitchenette where I was. My son walked toward me with heavy steps that echoed on the floor. "Mom, enough is enough. Karen told me what happened. The investors left because of you." "I didn't do anything," I answered honestly. "I just brought the coffee as they asked." Robert let out a humorless laugh. "You didn't do anything?" "Exactly. You never do anything useful. You just get in the way, eat our food, use our space, and now you scare away our investors with your victim face." Karen joined us, resting a hand on Robert's shoulder in a gesture of marital solidarity. "Robert and I have been talking about this for weeks. We have been more than patient with you, Lillian. We gave you a home, we gave you a job, we gave you purpose, but clearly you don't appreciate any of that." "Where do you want me to go?" I asked, my voice trembling. It wasn't acting this time. A part of me, the part that was still a mother, still had hope that my son would show even a sliver of humanity. "I don't have money, I don't have a house, you know that." "That's not our problem," Robert said with a coldness that cut me like a knife. "There are shelters for people your age. There are government programs. Look for help elsewhere because you are no longer welcome here." Karen smiled and added, "You have until Friday to get your things out of our apartment. 3 days. That's more than generous considering everything. 3 days. They were giving me 3 days to disappear from their lives." I looked into my son's eyes, trying to find the boy who once loved his mother, but I only saw a cruel stranger. "Are you really going to do this, Robert? Are you really going to throw your own mother out onto the street?" "I'm not throwing you out onto the street," he replied. avoiding my gaze. I'm giving you the opportunity to be independent. You're already 64, Mom. It's time for you to grow up and value yourself. Grow up and value myself. The man who had lived with me until he was 28, who never paid rent, whom I fed and clothed for decades, was telling me to grow up. Besides, Karen added, with that sweet tone she used when she wanted to sound reasonable, it's not like we have a normal mother-son relationship. You abandoned Robert when he was a child to go to work all day. You were never there for him emotionally. He practically had to raise himself. I stared at her, unable to believe what I was hearing. Did Robert tell you that I worked 18 hours a day because his father left us without a cent? Did he tell you that I sold food on the street after my office job to pay for his school? Did he tell you that there were nights when I didn't eat so he could have dinner? Dramatic stories of a martyr mother, Karen sneered with a wave of her hand. All mothers work, Lillian. You're not special, and clearly you didn't do a good job if Robert grew up with so much resentment toward you. Robert nodded, validating every venomous word from his wife. At that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that there was no turning back, no possible redemption. My son was lost. It's okay, I said. I will leave on Friday. Robert seemed surprised that I had accepted so easily. He probably expected drama, tears, pleas, but I was tired of acting. That's it? You're not going to beg us to let you stay? He asked with an almost disappointed tone. I shook my head. No, you are right. It's time for me to go. Karen smiled victoriously. Excellent. I'm glad you're finally being reasonable. Now, get back to work. You still have to earn your keep until Friday. She turned her back on me and returned to her desk. Robert looked at me for a few more seconds and then followed his wife. I watched them walk away together, her whispering something that made him smile. I went back to the kitchenette and took out my phone. I checked the time. 12 p.m. Elias would arrive in about 5 hours, just 5 more hours of this charade. I wrote a quick message. They accelerated the plans. They're kicking me out Friday. I need you to bring everything today. The response came almost instantly. I'm arriving in the city, sister. I'll be there at 5. Hang in there a little longer. The next few hours passed in slow motion. Every minute felt like an eternity as I cleaned, organized, and served coffee like the invisible employee I had been for 2 years. Karen was making desperate calls trying to get other investors. Robert had returned to his job, but called every hour to verify that I wasn't causing more problems. Melissa and Danielle worked in silence, exchanging worried glances every time Karen yelled on the phone. At 3 p.m., he said, "This 2 a.m." Karen ended a call so forcefully that she almost broke the phone. It's useless. No one wants to invest. Everyone asks for audited financial statements and documentation that I don't have. She got up from her chair and walked toward the window, looking at the city with her arms crossed. 3 months. I only have 3 months before everything collapses. She was talking to herself, but loud enough for everyone to hear. It was her way of creating drama, seeking attention and pity. Danielle swallowed and dared to ask, Mrs. Karen, does that mean the company is going to close? Karen turned around with eyes full of fake tears. I don't know, Danielle. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe we'll have to let some people go. Let some people go code for I'm going to fire them without paying them what I owe them. I saw Melissa clench her fists under her desk. Karen owed her 4 months of salary. Now Danielle was 3 months without full pay, but my daughter-in-law kept buying expensive clothes, going to elegant restaurants, and posting photos of her successful life on Instagram. At 4:30 p.m., I began to feel butterflies in my stomach. Elias would arrive in 30 minutes. I went to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. The bruise on my cheek had gotten darker, almost black in the center. My lip was still swollen. I looked exactly like what I was, a 64-year-old woman who had been beaten and humiliated by her own family. Perfect evidence for what was coming. I took out my phone and reviewed the documents Elias had sent me that morning. Everything was ready. The property deeds for the building where Robert lived, the lease agreement signed by my son, the financial reports of my investments, the photographs of all Karen's fraudulent documents that Melissa had collected. The audio recordings where Robert and Karen spoke of me as if I were trash. Everything perfectly organized, everything legally binding, everything ready to destroy the world of lies they lived in. I returned to the office and prepared more coffee, although no one had asked for it. I needed to keep my hands busy so I wouldn't tremble with anticipation. Karen was at her desk writing emails, probably lying to more potential investors. Melissa looked at me and discreetly held up 5 fingers. 5 minutes. I nodded almost imperceptibly. The thunder. At exactly 5 o'clock, I heard the elevator arrive at the 14th floor. The doors opened and my heart raced. But it wasn't Elias, it was Robert, who had returned from his office. "I came to take you both home," he announced to Karen and me. "It's late and we have to get up early tomorrow again." Karen picked up her cream-colored designer bag and turned off her computer. "Perfect, love. I'm exhausted. Today was a terrible day. Thanks to your mother." I stood up to follow them. My phone vibrated. A message from Elias. "I'm downstairs in the lobby. Should I come up or wait here?" I replied quickly, "Come up. It's time." I put the phone away and walked toward the door where Robert and Karen were waiting impatiently. "Hurry up, Mom. We don't have all day," my son said, looking at his expensive watch that he probably bought on credit. We left the office and walked down the hall toward the elevator. Karen went ahead, swinging her bag, Robert in the middle checking his phone, and me in the back, as always. We reached the elevator just as the doors were opening, and there he was, my brother Elias. I hadn't seen him in person for 6 months. He had aged a bit, more gray hair in his black hair, more wrinkles around his eyes, but he was still the same strong, serene man I had known since childhood. He was dressed simply, dark gray jeans, a plain work shirt, worn boots, exactly what a farmer would wear. In his hands he carried a brown leather briefcase and a large manila envelope. Robert looked him up and down with obvious contempt. My son had never respected my family from the country. He saw us as inferior, ignorant, poor people. "Excuse me, this elevator is full," Robert said in a rude tone. "Wait for the next one." Elias didn't move. He looked me directly in the eyes, and I saw his expression change when he saw my bruised face. His jaw tightened, his eyes filled with contained rage. "Elias," I said softly. My brother stepped into the elevator, completely ignoring Robert. "Sister," he replied, his voice heavy with emotion. "Who did that to you?" He pointed to my purple cheek. The silence in the elevator was so dense you could cut it with a knife. Karen and Robert looked at me with huge eyes, finally connecting the dots. This man from the country wasn't a stranger. He was my brother. "It was an accident," I lied one last time. Elias shook his head. "Don't lie to protect someone who doesn't deserve it." He looked at Robert with an intensity that made my son step back. "And you did this to your mother." It wasn't a question, it was an affirmation. Robert tried to regain his arrogance. "I don't know who the hell you are, but don't meddle in family matters. My mother fell." End of story. Elias let out a humorless laugh. "She fell. That's the story you're gonna tell." The elevator doors closed and we began our descent. 15 floors of absolute tension. "Look, friend," Karen said with her sweet, manipulative voice. "We understand you're worried about Lillian. It's normal, but she lives with us and is perfectly well cared for. The bruise really was a fall. At her age, she doesn't have the balance she used to." Elias looked at her with such coldness that Karen stopped smiling. "At her age? How interesting, coming from someone who makes her work 12 hours a day without pay." Carrington's face paled. "How do you know that?" Elias raised the manila envelope he was carrying. "I know many things. I know my sister cleans your bathrooms. I know she carries your boxes. I know you treat her like a slave. I know your company is bankrupt. I know you owe money to half the world. I know everything, Karen." The elevator doors opened on the ground floor. Elias stepped out first and turned to look at us. "We're going to Robert's house. We need to have a very important conversation." Robert let out a nervous laugh. "To my house? No way. I don't know who you think you are, but you're not coming into my home." "To your house," Elias repeated with strange emphasis. "Interesting that you call it that." He pulled a document from the envelope and extended it to Robert. "Read this." My son took the paper with trembling hands. I saw his eyes scan the lines, saw his face go from confusion to disbelief to absolute horror. This can't be real, Robert whispered. Robert held the document with trembling hands. His eyes read the same lines over and over, as if he couldn't process what he was seeing. Karen snatched the paper from his hands. What does it say? What is this? Her voice sounded hysterical as she scanned the document. I watched her turn pale, almost transparent. The paper fell from her fingers as if it burned. It can't be, Karen muttered. This is false. It's a forgery. Elias smiled without humor. Do you want me to call the county recorder's office right now to verify? Go ahead. I have the number saved on my phone. Or better yet, we can go there personally. It's only 10 minutes from here. I picked up the document from the floor. It was the deed of ownership for the entire building where Robert lived, registered 3 years ago in the name of a company called Valley Investments Inc. And at the bottom of the document, in small but completely legal print, appeared my name as the majority owner of said company, Lillian Hernandez Vega. You, Mom, Robert said, his voice hoarse. This says you own the building, the entire building. That means the apartment where I live. He couldn't finish the sentence. The reality hit him like a hammer. I nodded slowly. Yes, Robert. It means you've been paying me rent for 2 years without knowing it. The silence that followed was absolute. We were standing in the lobby of the corporate building with people passing around us, but for the four of us, the world had stopped. Karen was the first to react. This is ridiculous. You're lying to us. Lillian doesn't have the money to buy a bicycle, much less an entire building. Look at her. She dresses like a beggar. She has nothing. Elias opened the leather briefcase he was carrying and pulled out more documents, so many that they formed a thick wad. Do you want to see my sister's bank statements, the deeds for her commercial properties, the stock investments, the certificates of deposit? I have everything here, every cent documented and legal. He extended the papers to Karen, but she didn't take them. It was as if she were afraid to touch them, afraid that they might be real. Robert did take them. I watched his hands tremble as he turned page after page. Bank statements with 6-figure balances, deeds to 4 more commercial buildings, rental contracts for commercial premises, investment certificates, everything in my name, in the name of companies where I appeared as the principal owner. 4 million, Robert whispered, looking at a particular bank statement. This document says you have millions of dollars in this account. Just this one, like. He looked at me with eyes that didn't recognize me. Who are you, really? The question hurt more than I expected. After all, I was still his mother. I'd always been his mother, but he had never really seen me. I'm the same person who raised you alone after your father abandoned us, I replied with a firm voice. The same one who worked 18 hours a day to give you an education. The same one who sold food on the streets to pay for your college. The difference is that you assume that because I worked hard, it meant I was poor. Elias added with a severe tone, Our mother taught us something very important. True wealth is not flaunted. Only insecure people need to show their money. Lillian applied that lesson better than anyone. While you and your wife were buying expensive things on credit to impress strangers, my sister was investing every penny she earned. But the apartment where I live, Robert said, trying to process everything, the contract I signed 2 years ago. The owner was a man named Richard Miller. I spoke with him on the phone several times. Elias smiled. Richard Miller is our lawyer. He manages Lillian's properties through different companies to maintain her privacy. Technically, he is the legal representative, but my sister is the real owner. Karen finally found her voice. This is impossible. Lillian can't have that kind of money. She's an uneducated old woman who worked as a secretary. Where did she get millions of dollars? Elias looked at her with contempt. My sister has a master's degree in business administration that she paid for herself by working during the day and studying at night. She worked for 20 years as a business consultant for international companies. She specialized in financial restructuring and corporate mergers. She was earning $150,000 a year when she retired 5 years ago. I saw how every word was a slap in Robert's face. His mother, the woman he thought was ignorant and useless, had more education than him. She earned more money than he would ever earn. She was more successful than he could dream of. And the most painful part, he had never bothered to ask her about her life, her past, her achievements. He had only assumed she was poor and pathetic. When I retired, I continued, taking control of my story. I had $1.2 million saved. I invested it intelligently. I bought commercial properties in areas I knew would grow. I invested in the stock market with conservative but effective strategies. In 5 years, I multiplied my money to almost $4 million. $4 million. Robert slumped against the lobby wall. His legs couldn't support him anymore. $4 million, and I treated you like trash. I hit you. I called you a kept woman. His voice broke, but I felt no pity. No, there was still much more to reveal. And why? Karen asked, her voice sharp. Why pretend to be poor? Why come to live with us as an employee? If you're a millionaire, what kind of sick game is this? Elias answered before me. It's not a game, it's a test. 2 years ago, when Robert married you, my sister noticed changes in him. He became materialistic, arrogant, disrespectful of his own family. She wanted to know if it was temporary or if he had truly become someone like that. So I came here, I said, looking directly at Robert. I sold my big house and moved to a small one in the country that I keep under another name. I put away all my expensive clothes. I bought simple clothes at thrift stores. I showed up at your door with 2 old suitcases and a story of poverty, and you believed it without asking a single question. Robert shook his head over and over. No, this is not happening. Karen took him by the arm. Robert, calm down. Even if she has money, that doesn't change anything. We still own our lives. She can't force us to do anything. Elias let out a dry laugh. Can't force you to do anything? Dear Karen, your husband is living on my sister's property. He pays $2,000 in rent every month. If she wants to, she can raise the rent to $10,000 tomorrow. Or even better, she can evict him with 30 days' notice. The color completely disappeared from Karen's face. You can't do that. We have a contract. Tenant rights. I took out my phone and found the file of the contract Robert had signed. I showed it to her. Clause 12, paragraph 3, the landlord may modify terms with 60 days' notice. Clause 15, paragraph 2. The landlord may terminate the contract if the tenant or their direct relatives cause physical harm to any person within the property. I touched my purple cheek. This qualifies as physical harm. Technically, I could evict you tomorrow. I saw panic set in the eyes of both of them. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. But that's not all, then Elias continued, opening another folder. We also have evidence of all your company's financial irregularities, Karen. Fake invoices, tax evasion, services billed and not delivered. We have copies of everything. Karen staggered. How did you get that? I looked toward the building where the office was. Melissa has been very helpful. It turns out that when you don't pay people for 4 months, they lose loyalty. Every document you signed, every email you sent, every lie you told, everything is documented and ready to be sent to the IRS. Karen lunged toward me, her hands outstretched like claws. You old witch, this was all a trap. Elias stepped between us before she could touch me. My brother was a big man, strong from years of work on the farm. Karen bounced off him as if she had collided with a concrete wall. Don't touch her, Elias said in a voice so low and menacing that even I felt a chill. You already hit her once. There won't be a second time. Robert was still against the wall, looking at the documents scattered on the floor. He picked up one that showed the rent payments he had made for 2 years, and 24 months multiplied by $2,000, $8,000 that he had paid to his own mother without knowing it. All this time, he murmured, all this time I was supporting you without realizing it, and I still treated you like trash. You weren't supporting me, I corrected firmly. You were paying a fair price to live in a luxury property in the best neighborhood in the city. In fact, I was doing you a favor. Similar apartments in the building, rent for $4,000 a month. I charged you half because you are my son. Those words hit him like a punch. Karen, recovering from the initial shock, changed tactics. She smoothed her dress and took a deep breath. Okay, Lillian, I understand you're upset. What happened yesterday was horrible and Robert will apologize. But we are family. We can resolve this like civilized adults. I looked at her with disbelief. Civilized? After 2 years of slavery, after beatings and humiliations. What exactly are you proposing, Karen? She smiled, as that saleswoman smile she used with clients. I propose that we forget all this. You can stay in the apartment, of course. We'll give you a bigger room. And as for the company, perhaps we could make an arrangement. Elias let out a bitter laugh. An arrangement? How convenient. An hour ago, you were kicking her out onto the street. Now that you know she's a millionaire, you want to make arrangements. Karen ignored my brother and addressed me directly. Lillian, I know we made mistakes, but your consulting company is retired. You don't use it. I have an active company that only needs capital. We could be partners. You invest, say, $200,000, and I give you 40% participation. The audacity of this woman was breathtaking. An hour ago, she was calling me a useless old woman. Now she wanted me to invest in her fraudulent company. And why would I invest $200,000 in a company that is bankrupt and has illegal practices? Karen blinked several times. It's not bankrupt, it's just going through a temporary difficult moment. With adequate investment, it could grow exponentially. I took out my phone and opened the files Melissa had sent me. Your company owes $13,000 to suppliers. You owe 4 months' salary to Melissa, 3 to Danielle. You have 2 active clients who pay a total of $3,000 a month. Your operating expenses are $8,000 a month, not counting salaries. Mathematically, it's impossible for you to survive more than 3 months. I showed her the screen with all the figures. Karen tried to snatch the phone from me, but Elias blocked her hand. Where did you get that information? That is confidential. It's private. I shrugged. When you spend 12 hours a day in an office organizing files, you see many things. And when you are a retired business consultant with 20 years of experience, you understand very well what you see. Robert finally spoke. So, everything was a lie from the beginning. You came here just to spy on us. His voice sounded broken, wounded. A part of me, that part that was still a mother, felt pain for him. But the larger part, the part that had been beaten and enslaved, felt nothing. I didn't come to spy. I came to get to know the man you had become. I came with the hope of being wrong. But you weren't wrong, Elias said, looking at Robert with contempt. My nephew turned out to be exactly what we feared, a man who hits his mother, a man who allows his wife to enslave her, a man without honor, without dignity, without values. Robert straightened up, trying to regain some pride. You have no right to judge me. You don't know anything about my life. I know enough, Elias replied. I know my sister gave you everything. She raised you alone after your father left you. She worked until her back was broken so you could study. She paid for your entire college while she ate once a day, and you repaid her by hitting her in the face. The silence that followed was heavy. People passed around us, looking with curiosity. We were putting on a show in the middle of the lobby. Let's go to the apartment, Elias said, picking up the documents from the floor. This conversation needs privacy. Robert shook his head. No, you are not coming into my house. Elias stared at him. It's no longer your house, Robert. It's my sister's property. She decides who comes in and who doesn't. And believe me, after today, maybe you'll be the one who can't enter. Those words finally broke my son's resistance. His shoulders slumped, all the arrogance, all the false security collapsed. Okay, he whispered. Let's go. The new rules. We walked toward the parking lot in silence. Elias went ahead with the briefcase full of documents. I walked behind him. Robert and Karen brought up the rear, holding hands as if they were going to an execution. The car ride was tense. Robert drove with trembling hands. Karen looked out the window without saying a word. Elias and I were in the back seat. My brother took my hand and squeezed it gently. Are you sure about this, sister? He whispered so low that only I could hear. I nodded. I was surer than ever. We arrived at the building, that beautiful 12-story building with a glass and steel facade that I bought 3 years ago. We went up to the 11th floor in an uncomfortable elevator. Robert opened the apartment door with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. We all entered. The place was exactly as I remembered it. Elegant, modern, expensive, and completely mine. Sit down, Elias ordered, pointing to the leather sofa. Robert and Karen obeyed like scolded children. Elias opened the briefcase on the coffee table and began pulling out more documents, so many that the table was filled. property deeds, bank statements, contracts, photographs, transcribed recordings. 2 years of evidence of who these people really were. Now we are going to talk about the future, Elias said in a business tone. You have two options. The first, Lillian files legal charges against Robert for domestic violence, against Karen for tax evasion and business fraud. She evicts you immediately and you never have contact with her again. Robert would probably see prison. Karen would definitely see prison. I watched both of them turn ash-colored. The second option, Elias continued, is that you do exactly what my sister says when she says it, how she says it, with no complaints, no negotiations, no exceptions. Karen swallowed. And what exactly does she want? I stood up and walked toward the window that overlooked the city. From there, I could see 3 of my other buildings, my small, silent empire that no one knew about. I want you to understand your real place in this world, I said without turning to look at them. I want you to feel what it's like to be used. I want you to learn what respect means. I turned around and looked directly at them. And above all, I want you to pay for every humiliation, every blow, every cruel word you said to me for 2 years. Robert opened his mouth to speak, but Elias raised a hand. Don't interrupt. Your mother is not finished. I approached the sofa where they were sitting. I leaned in to be at their level, my eyes looking straight into theirs. As of today, the rules changed completely. I sat down in the single armchair facing them, the pearl gray armchair that cost $4,000 and that Karen showed off in her Instagram photos. I crossed my legs and folded my hands on my lap, adopting the posture I used in my consulting days when negotiating with arrogant executives. Rule number 1, I began in a calm but firm voice. Robert, you will continue to live here, but the rent goes up to $3,500 in a month. Starting next month, fair market price for this area. I watched my son's eyes widen in horror. $3,500? I can't afford that. I barely cover the $2,000 with my current salary. Elias smiled without humor. Then you will get a second job, or a better job, or you will learn to live on a budget like normal people. Karen stood up from the sofa, her hands trembling. This is extortion. You can't raise our rent just like that. I took out my phone and showed her the contract. Clause 12, paragraph 3. I already mentioned it to you. The landlord can adjust the rent with 60 days written notice. Everything completely legal. In fact, I am being generous. I could charge you $4,000, which is what it's really worth. Karen sank back into the sofa, defeated. Robert had his hands over his face, probably calculating how the hell he would pay that amount. Rule number 2, I continued. Karen, your company needs a complete restructuring. I will become the majority partner with 60% of participation. You will keep 40% net. Karen raised her head abruptly. 60%? That's my company. I built it from scratch. I laughed with genuine amusement. You built it, dear. Your company is sinking in debt and fraud. I will save it, but I will do it my way. Elias added, opening another folder. My sister will invest $250,000. She will pay all your debts to suppliers, the back salaries of your employees, and give you working capital. In exchange, she takes total control of the finances and operations. Karen shook her head over and over. No, I won't give away my company. I'd rather close it. I shrugged. You can close it, but the debts don't disappear. The $13,000 you owe plus the back salaries will lead to legal action. They will seize everything you own. And then there are the tax problems. I took out a specific folder and opened it on the table. Fake invoices presented to the IRS. Deductions for expenses that never existed. Unreported income. I have copies of everything. An anonymous call to the IRS, and they will investigate you for years. You'll probably end up in prison for tax evasion. The color completely disappeared from Karen's face. Her lips trembled. That's blackmail, she whispered. It's not blackmail, I corrected calmly. It's a business offer. Option A, you accept my terms, save your company, pay your debts, avoid prison. Option B, you reject my terms. Your company goes bankrupt, you get sued, you get investigated, you go to prison, you decide. I looked at my watch. You have 2 minutes to decide. The silence that followed was absolute. I could hear Robert's heavy breathing, Karen's contained sobs, the ticking of the expensive clock on the wall. I accept, Karen finally said, her voice broken. I accept your terms. Elias pulled out documents that were already prepared. Sign here, here, and here. These are the share transfer papers. From this moment on, Lillian Hernandez Vega owns 60% of Karen and Associates. Well, actually, now it will be called Net LH Consultants, a more professional name. Karen took the pen Elias offered her. Her hands were shaking so much she could barely write. She signed each page with tears falling onto the paper. There you go, Elias said, collecting the documents. Legally binding, notarized, and everything. He put the papers in the briefcase and looked at me. Continue, sister. I nodded and stood up. Rule number 3, I said, walking around the sofa where they were sitting. Karen, starting tomorrow, you will work under my direct supervision. You will arrive at 7 in the morning. You will stay until 7 at night. You will learn to do your job honestly, without lies, without fraud, without shortcuts. I stopped behind her. And guess who your administrative assistant will be while you learn? Karen turned to look at me with huge eyes. No, she whispered, understanding immediately. Yes, I replied with a cold smile. You will be my assistant. You will prepare my coffee. You will organize my files. You will clean the office. You will do exactly what I did for 2 years, but with the difference that I will pay you. Minimum wage, of course, until you prove you can be honest and hardworking. This is humiliating, Karen said, her voice trembling. It's pure revenge. I leaned down until my face was close to hers. No, dear. Revenge would be sending you straight to prison. This is education. You're going to learn what it means to work honestly. You're going to understand what it feels like to be treated as inferior. And maybe, just maybe, you'll become a better person. I straightened up and looked at Robert. Rule number 4, you and I are going to family therapy, weekly sessions, mandatory, non-negotiable. You pay. That's $200 per session. Robert raised his head. Therapy, what for? My voice broke a little for the first time. To see if there is anything to save in our relationship. For you to understand the damage you did to me. For you to learn that hitting your mother, unforgivable. I touched my purple cheek. This bruise will heal in 2 weeks. But what you did to me here, I pointed to my chest, that will take much longer if it ever heals. I saw tears running down Robert's cheeks. Mom, I didn't mean to. I was so angry, so frustrated with my life. I shouldn't have. I raised a hand to stop him. I don't want to hear cheap excuses now. Real apologies are shown with actions, not words. Elias pulled out more documents. Rule number 5. Lillian will maintain control of all finances related to the apartment. That means she approves any purchase over $200. No maxed out credit cards, no impulsive purchases. You will live on a real budget based on real income. Karen let out a moan. We can't live like that. I need decent clothes for business meetings. You have a closet full of clothes you never wear, Tess. I replied coldly. Clothes you bought on credit that you are still paying for. You will learn to live with what you have. Like I lived for 2 years wearing the same simple clothes over and over while you showed off your purchases on social media. I sat down in the armchair again. Rule number 6, and this is very important, Melissa and Danielle will receive all their back salary tomorrow. In addition, they will receive a compensation bonus for everything they suffered working for you. Where am I going to get that money? Karen asked hysterically. Elias smiled. From Lillian's investment, she will pay, but you will sign the checks and personally apologize to each one. You will explain that you were a bad boss and that things will change. Karen buried her face in her hands. They'll hate me. They'll think I'm weak. I shrugged. You should have thought of that before exploiting them for months. I stood up and walked toward the window again. The city stretched out before me, full of lights that were beginning to turn on as the sun set. Rule number 7, the last one for today. Every Sunday you will come to dinner with me at a restaurant of my choosing. We will talk as a civilized family. No phones, no distractions, no excuses. You will learn to see me as a person, not as an employee or a burden. Robert wiped his tears. And if we don't accept all these rules, what happens if we say no? Elias answered before me. Then option A is activated. Legal charges, eviction, tax investigation, prison, everything we have mentioned, and believe me, we have enough evidence to completely destroy your lives. He opened a final folder full of photographs. We have photos of every bruise Lillian had in these 2 years, audio recordings where you talk about her like trash, testimonies from Melissa and Danielle, fraudulent financial documents with your signature, Karen. It's a solid case. Karen and Robert looked at each other. A silent conversation passed between them. Finally, Robert spoke. We accept all the rules, everything. His voice sounded defeated, broken, empty. A part of me felt victory. Another part felt immense sadness for what we had come to. Elias closed the briefcase with a dry thud that resonated in the silence of the apartment. Perfect. The legal documents will arrive tomorrow by courier. You have 24 hours to sign them and return them notarized. He stood up and extended his hand to help me up. Sister, I think our work here is done for today. I walked toward the apartment door, that apartment that was mine, but where I had been treated like trash for 2 years. I stopped at the threshold and turned to look at Robert and Karen one last time. They were still sitting on the sofa, devastated, their eyes red and swollen. One more thing, I said in a soft but firm voice. I want you to understand something very important. I approached again, slowly, letting every word carry weight. I didn't do all this for money. I didn't do it for revenge, although it may seem like it. I did it because I needed you to see the truth about yourselves. I looked directly into Robert's eyes. Son, you became your father. Yeah. The man who abandoned us, who treated us as if we were worthless. You swore you would never be like him, but look at yourself now. Robert sobbed openly. Ma, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I shook my head. Apologies don't erase 2 years of humiliation. They don't heal this bruise. They don't return my dignity. But maybe, just maybe, this process will teach you to be a better man. I turned to Karen, and you built a company on lies and exploitation. You flaunted success you didn't have. You treated people like disposable tools. Karen didn't look up. I just wanted to succeed. I wanted to show the world I was worth something. Her voice was barely a whisper. Real success is not built on the backs of others, I replied. Real success comes from honest work, respect, integrity, things that clearly no one taught you, but I will teach you, even if it has to be the hard way. Elias opened the door and walked out into the hall. I followed him, but stopped one last time. Tomorrow at 7 o'clock sharp at the office, Karen. Don't be late. And Robert, I expect your call before Friday to schedule our first therapy session. Don't disappoint me. I closed the door behind me, leaving them alone with the weight of their new reality. In the elevator, Elias hugged me tightly. How do you feel, sister? I rested my head on his shoulder, and for the first time in 2 years, I let the tears flow freely. I don't know. I feel relief, pain, sadness, anger, all at the same time. My brother stroked my hair like when we were children. You did the right thing. Mom would be proud of you. Mom, I remembered her words on her deathbed 10 years ago. Lillian, use the money I leave you wisely, but never, ever let people treat you badly just because they don't know who you are. The true test of someone's character is how they treat those they believe are inferior. I had followed her advice to the letter, and now I knew exactly who my son was. We left the building into the night that had fallen over the city. Elias took me to an elegant but cozy restaurant nearby. We ordered expensive wine and delicious food. For 2 hours, we talked about everything but Robert and Karen. We talked about the farm, about his children, who were my adored nieces and nephews, about his business expansion plans. For a moment, I could forget the pain. Do you really think they can change? Elias asked when dessert arrived. I shrugged. I don't know, maybe Robert will. Deep down, he's still my son. There's still some of that good boy I raised. Karen is more difficult. She is very ingrained in her ways, but at least now she won't be able to keep hurting other people. Elias raised his glass of wine. To you, sister, for your courage, your intelligence, and your ability to play the long game. I clinked my glass with his. To Mom, who taught us that true wealth is in character, not in the bank account. We drank in silence, honoring the memory of the woman who had shaped us. That night, I slept in a 5-star hotel. The bed was soft, the sheets smelled of lavender, and for the first time in 2 years, no one would order me to get up at dawn to serve coffee. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror before going to bed. The bruise on my cheek looked terrible under the bright light, but my eyes shone with something I hadn't seen in a long time. Recovered dignity. The aftermath. I arrived at the office at 6:30 a.m. the next morning. I wanted to be there before Karen to set the tone. Melissa and Danielle arrived at 7:10, surprised to see me. "Mrs. Lillian, what are you doing here so early?" Melissa asked. I smiled. "I have important news for the two of you. Please have a seat." I explained everything, how I was the new majority owner of the company, how they would receive all their back salary, plus compensation bonuses, how things would change radically starting today. Melissa started crying with relief. Danielle hugged me so tightly she almost squeezed the air out of me. "Thank you," they repeated over and over. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Karen arrived at exactly 7 o'clock. She walked in with her head down, without her usual arrogance, without her noisy heels. She wore simple, almost humble clothes. She looked at me, waiting for instructions. "Good morning, Karen," I said in a professional tone. "Your first task is to prepare coffee for everyone. Then you will organize last year's files that are in boxes in the storage room. After that, you will clean the kitchen and the bathrooms. Any questions?" I watched her swallow, struggling against her pride. "No, no questions." She walked toward the kitchen with slumped shoulders. Melissa and Danielle looked at me with huge eyes, unable to believe what they were seeing. Their former boss was now the employee. Poetic justice at its finest. "Mrs. Lillian," Melissa whispered, "is this real? I'm not dreaming." I laughed softly. "It is very real, and from now on, this company will operate with honesty, respect, and professionalism. We have a lot of work ahead of us to rebuild the reputation that Karen destroyed, but we will succeed together." I spent the next few days establishing order in the chaos. I hired a forensic accountant to review all the books. I personally contacted every former client to apologize for the poor service and offer compensation. I fired the few remaining clients because their accounts were tainted with fraudulent practices. Karen worked in silence, doing every task I assigned her without complaining. I watched her struggle with her ego every time she'd had to clean or serve coffee, but she did it every day without fail. Robert called on Wednesday to schedule therapy. His voice sounded small, ashamed. "I found a therapist who can see us on Thursdays at 6 in the evening. Does that work for you?" I accepted and marked the appointment in my calendar. Sunday arrived faster than I expected. I had reserved a table at an elegant but cozy restaurant. Robert and Karen arrived on time, dressed appropriately but without the ostentation of before. We sat in uncomfortable silence. I ordered wine for the table. "We're going to make this simple," I said when the drinks arrived. "Each one will say 3 things about their week. No lies, no exaggerations, just the truth." Robert went first. "This week, I learned that I have been a terrible son. I learned that my mother is stronger than I will ever be. And I learned that I have a lot to change about myself." His voice broke on the last word. Karen continued, "This week, I learned what it means to work honestly. I learned that humility is not weakness. And I learned that I built my life on sand that is collapsing." It was my turn. "This week, I recovered my dignity. This week, I set boundaries that I should have set years ago. And this week, I decided that even though it hurts, there is still hope for this family." We raised our glasses in a silent toast. It wasn't reconciliation, it wasn't even forgiveness yet, but it was a beginning. I looked at my son, the man who had hit me, and I saw tears in his eyes. I looked at my daughter-in-law, the woman who had enslaved me, and I saw genuine shame on her face. The road would be long, painful, difficult, but Mom had taught me that family is worth it when they are willing to change. Only time would tell if they truly were. For now, I had my dignity back, I had my power revealed, and I had the satisfaction of knowing that no one, absolutely no one, would ever treat me as invisible again. The poor, pathetic old woman was dead. In her place was San Lillian Hernandez Vega, businesswoman, property owner, consultant, and above all, a woman who finally respected herself enough to demand respect from others. That night, when I returned to my hotel, I looked at myself in the mirror. The bruise was beginning to fade. In a week, there would be no physical trace, but the lesson would be etched forever. in me and Robert and Karen, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough.